If there's one place anybody was going to tell me they're going to paint a fresco, the last place would be sort of North Carolina, sort of moonshine country. You know? It probably is, in fact, a good spot to do it, because you don't get all these morons, these pseudo-intellectual imbeciles coming around passing judgment. Here you just got, happy-go-lucky country folk who just appreciate something that's done well, something that's done with dedication.
In the summer of 1980, 20 artists were invited by Father Fulton Hodge to learn the ancient art of fresco painting from fresco master Ben Long. They gathered at the Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in the small mountain community of Glendale Springs, North Carolina, to help Ben paint a large fresco of the Last Supper and to attempt their own smaller frescoes. This program documents that experience.
It was the church that kept art and music and drama alive for hundreds of years. And if it wasn't for the church, we wouldn't have some of the great works that now exist. But the last few hundred years, the church has not been the principal agent. And it seems to me it's time the church is reevaluating its position and its influence and its ability to help people to create and to encourage such creativity, because it is of God.
When I do a portrait, I'm really looking at the person and trying to see into them rather than just get a likeness. I think quite a few people can get a likeness. But for the same reason, I don't use photographs, because of this, the reason I don't think you can certainly feel the life coming from that person through a two-dimensional glossy. I can watch changes go on. There's something that automatically thrusts that person into an intimate situation with the fact that their portrait is being painted, because they feel that they're being looked at very hard. And slowly, once they get used to you, you see them go back into themselves. And there are quite a few changes that go on, and I think that's the essence of true painting is that whether it's portrait painting or otherwise, is that you try to capture that kind of feeling and moment. The end result is that I'm trying to get as much of that person out of them and onto the picture, into the painting itself. I want to get something that has a psychological key to it as well as a likeness.
The more important you are, the longer it was supposed to have been. It's like a fisherman could maybe have it, I don't know. Some of the more important ones could have them all the way down to the ankles now.
Well, especially the way I'm thinking about this now, I'm not thinking about having a huge tablecloth to hide all the legs and everything. I might really try to do different attitudes of legs and feet going on underneath the table. So we might need something like that.
For the men.
Because I really don't want to do knees. You can't just chuck this piece of wall away. And that's why you really get to know each element that's about to be put up there. It doesn't mean that you are restricted to keeping it that way. I mean, why? It just means that you now know it, and this can allow all sorts of changes. I can feel very free with this now.
I really have no love at all for modern art or architecture. And a lot of people that work in those realms, I think, are very insecure people. They don't have much respect for their materials. They just, use anything and everything, and once it's out of the studio, they don't care if it falls apart or what, just the pure experience, as they say, of doing it. And I guess being more of a conservatively orientated person, I have to feel that you gotta have a lot more work into what's going on, have a really good understanding of nature and the beauty that's around us, and I don't see how people can abstract nature if they don't understand it and can reproduce it visually as one does see it.
Basically, I was looking for good, strong features interesting heads so that there wouldn't be a dull picture. I did have a few people that looked a little too neat and tidy, even though they had a beard. And you can't really convince anybody that this was something that happened 2,000 years ago when they're sitting there with a razor cut. So slowly but surely we found quite enough characters around here that would fit. In fact, there was an abundance of them.
Drawing is a process of exploration. When you draw, you're exploring that person's face. And if there isn't much to explore, then it's not, you know, if you have someone get up on the stand who looks like they come out of Vogue, or looks like they should be in a 1967 class photograph of Poughkeepsie High School sort of thing, it makes it difficult to explore, really.
And a great big nose, too.
Why, you don't have a great big nose, you have a little nose.
Mama has a big nose.
She does.
And my granddad has a big nose, and my grandpa has a big nose.
You do.
They all do. And my dad has a big nose, too. This boat must rock.
What's that?
That
Oh, that's about torn off?
Yeah, and this is on.
Uh-huh.
And you're trying to take the ordinary and make people see it for being something actually fairly special. And it's to make people stop and see what's around them, or what is life through someone else's eyes, through an artist's eyes, or just as you would like to hear music turned around. Or if someone used words well, it is a form of poetry. It deals with the spirit. I came here without a thought about it, sort of vague thoughts, mainly trying to put the Leonardo image out of my head for a while, but you can't do it. And then once I saw the wall, I had seen it before, but I'd forgotten it had this shape. I mean, somehow I thought it was squatter and lower and would serve better a scene of people strung out along a table. From there, I tried to come up with some ideas. I thought of separate tables. I thought of different angles, a Tintoretto type of approach of different viewpoints from high up and low down, and odd ones in which the table would run through the diagonal. But because of the simplicity of this church, I finally rejected all those and went back to this straight-on long table, which again evokes the Leonardo. But the way I tried to jerk that out of that sort of devastating imagery is by making it fairly asymmetrical. Well, I think the basic challenge of this one is that it's been done once extremely well. And I don't think there's a single person that goes around without thinking of the Last Supper in terms of the image that Leonardo created. And it's a very hard image to shake. I think any painter that confronts that will have a tough time. Of course, anyway, I think dealing with religious subject matter in this time, it's difficult to do just by the mere lifestyle that we have. Isn't quite like the Aricio on a regular fresco.
Yeah.
And I need to find out exactly what they did with this wall. But see, it's running too much.
Yeah, it is.
It needs to...
These things you're looking at here, now, those it looks like cracks to me.
Well, I hope they're not. Hand me that chair. The main thing, this thing should pull pull in right away because we're going to need all the absorbency we can.
It doesn't pull in at all.
And there are small cracks here.
Well, are they just, see, that's just where it's been sprayed. And we sprayed over here too. So is it the water that's causing the cracks?
Well, the small cracks shouldn't bother us too much because it's been dry for 2 years. The thing is, it might be the bricks underneath, which might, you can see the little shadow of each brick. It might mean that the bricks were too much
Baked.
or cooked too long or brought to a surface of non-absorbency. And it's not pulling well enough in the wall. Anyway, we'll see how long it will take us. It shouldn't have any trouble sticking to the surface, but it just might give us a problem with the length of time for painting. Anyway, we have to wet the wall down pretty well before we even begin to paint, to give it an evenness of pull. Or rather let it run evenly. Well, one thing that's always fascinated me is the craft side of the work as well. And that's true for oil painting or any other thing. Part of the fascination is with a real love of the tools. I tend to have this belief that if you love your materials and you have this love for what you're doing, it will make a better picture. Or at least as far as you're concerned, it will be a better picture. Because there's a certain respect you have for every element because you have to do it. And I still think you can be uninhibited in painting. But this kind of respect you have for your tools would certainly enhance the attention paid. You tend to be a little less careless about certain things.
I don't sit down there and think, well, where will the triangles and diagonals and things like that be? But it works out that whatever things carry your eye into the picture or work with it happen. I don't sit down with where will all the things go and lead to. I've never approached it that way, but I have learned a lot from the other students talking about theirs, how they started off planning where each figure will be. I've learned a lot about that, but mine has just been working with it until it worked itself, not necessarily going in with a set idea of how angles or lines or things like that meet. It seems to work out in the end, but I have to play with it a lot.
If you have the Christian belief, but you portray it in a kind of neutral way and not an artistic way, I feel like you've defeated the purpose. It doesn't get the message across as strong. It might to the Christian, but to a non-Christian that you're trying to convert, you're not going to faze them. They might as well read the Bible and get more meaning from it.
So it moves from that black baser kind of nature up through the middle ground, you know, from the foothills in a sense to that middle ground area. And then the farther away one gets and the higher, the lighter. And so I wanted to appear really as an abstract. I'm very interested in the interpretation of biblical tales or of any story, and finding an application in my own life, finding out what it is right now that makes that so valuable. Why has that carried through in history? Why is there so much power in that? And so I called this Getting Through the Day, because I think somehow it's what all of those stories represent that enables us to do that. I think there's a very direct application. And it's somehow finding us, being able to back away enough. For years I did nothing but total abstracts. Total. There was nothing figurative, nothing obviously recognizable. And then as I've gotten older, it's been interesting because I find it's almost as though as I understand more and more, I'm looking for a way to express that kind of emerging additional clarity. So things are coming more into focus, and I'm looking at them closer and closer and wanting to accept them more as they are and put them down that way and not diffuse the image.
Right now, the cross, I want it to be a sort of deep cadmium, crimson red, you know, to nothing else, just to say something in itself, you know, a red cross, you know. And just little color symbols like that, you know, sort of floating through. And along with the body, you know, different colors in the body, you know, to sort of add even more. So if the colors can come across, then even more, then the gesture will become even more, I think.
What particular moment do you have in mind here for this?
This is the 9th hour, or the time when he's on the cross and he is screaming on, you know, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Going from the drawing stage, you go to the cartoon stage, which is bringing the drawings up to the size they will actually be on the wall. And then you see again all kinds of problems that you can't see in a smaller, restricted space. And you make adjustments on the cartoon. Christ off center. I changed the vanishing point to another part of the picture. It's not in the center. I've separated the the body of men into two groups away from the Christ figure. There's not a continuation like you feel in most. There's a sort of a milling bunch of characters off to the left, which I tied together with a kind of a infinity symbol that runs through them. Once it's incorporated in the painting, you won't see it at all. You may feel it vaguely, but I don't think you'll see it. And then the other three I left over to the side, and it isolates the Christ figure quite a bit. From the cartoon, I take a tracing. In the old days, I used to go ahead and use the cartoon, but we're not allowed to punch holes in this one. We take a tracing and punch holes in it, and then with a gauze bag full of powdered color, an earth color, a red earth color, you pounce it after you've made registration marks on the wall to know exactly where this scene is about to take place. And I drew in each of those figures following the little dots that show up on the wall from the pouncing. And now what that creates is what is called the synopia. And they are also used for registration. In other words, when it comes to the time of painting, you can cover up one section. And when you want to put that figure back in there, you obviously can't see it because it's covered up. But you take the cartoon, or the tracing of the cartoon, and you lay it up on that section of the wall, and you'll see where it meets up with the synopia drawing underneath, so you can keep it squared, keep it situated in the way it should be. And that's the significance and the importance of the synopia.
Mr. Rose, has having all these artists in your community changed anything around here?
Not more than usual, I don't guess. Of course, we do have some strange faces around.
Are they different than most of your customers?
More like tourists, I'll say, that we have on the Parkway.
Do you think having the frescoes in the church will change your business? Help it along any?
Well, it should bring more people in the community, yes.
Would that be all year round or just in the summer?
That's a question I couldn't ask you, but I think mostly in summertime, probably all year round.
Have you been over to see the frescoes?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you think of them?
Well, they didn't have too much done the last time I was over there, just some sketches made, so. But I have seen the fresco picture up at St. Mary's Church, and it's just out of the world. So we expecting this to be likewise.
The early days of the project, my understanding was that the local gossip and fear was that we were harboring Cuban refugees here. Now, how such a thing could ever have gotten out, I don't have any idea. Then the second story that circulated in the community was the fact that the artists were using life models, nude models, for their studies, caused a great deal of disruption and gossip, local gossip. But once they began to see that this was not a nudist colony and that it was not frescoes that were going to be painted nude, then little by little the barriers have been broken down, and now the only thing that I hear and get at all is great reception, love, appreciation, people stopping in to see what's going on, and sharing their food with us.
Zum
we're mixing right now is one of the, the lighter flesh tones. The one that has been is being mixed over there is just the tone we want to work off. It's from the Contorno Fresco. Now this color we want to be quite sparing with because it's a really intense color. So we're just going to start floating around with a couple of different, intensities or combinations of the ochre and that with the white. And we want to use really as little white as possible because, the Bianco San Giovanni really does lighten up. So we're just going to experiment, then we'll have Ben see if it is the color he wants. We have a little bit of water here. Because also, the yellow will lighten up considerably along with the white, and so the color does end up much, much lighter than we see it. I can add just a bit more red because it hasn't really been noticed intensely enough. It is a very basic medium. I mean, you're working with the most basic kind of supports, and you're grinding your colors in water, and you put it right on this wall that is a natural kind of wall, the lime and sand. It returns to limestone state. I mean, cave paintings are like that. The colors are basically old, simple, permanent colors that are dependable and have been for centuries. I do mix a lot of the colors for Ben. I always want to be very precise in what he wants because I do use a few different colors on my palette, so I have a tendency to mix a little differently. So then what I do is I, constantly go over and have him check the color as he would want to see it. I find that if you have enough chaos, it begins to have a singular hum to it and creates its own piece. And I've been able to retreat fairly easily without letting it bother me. I think that's what is a little bit unique about this situation, that it is a very intense 3 months period of straight work on one thing, and you really get to know it. And if that enthusiasm can be maintained, I'm sure that those that really want to do a fresco and those that really want to do that particular subject matter will contribute quite a bit. And there are certainly capable ones around. So I don't worry about them. And I think now they're beginning to feel the thrill of it. So this next month, I think, will be the most interesting one.
It's a learning from each other. It's the same thing on a very minor scale that probably happened in the Italian Renaissance, where one man learned, another man would pick up from his learning and could carry it further because of what he had seen his predecessor doing, and we can all learn from each other that way. And most of all, we can all learn from Ben that way and carry our work a lot further as we watch him work right before what we're doing.
I think because it is a kind of an art form that once it's done, of course no one can possess it, that you have to sort of think along the lines of what you create as something that is being given to the viewer. And so consequently, whatever the subject matter is, of course I've only been associated with these religious ones. It all has to do with including the viewer much more than, say, an oil painting of mine, where I do it for myself. And once it's finished, of course, that's the experience of oil painting, done totally for myself, for whatever feelings I might have. And whether anyone else appreciates it is beside the point. It's a fairly precise medium. You can, of course, be very loose with it and free with it, but I think that's after you have a certain confidence about the medium. The hardest thing about the fresco medium is handling figures, and if I can somehow show how a figure can be handled, and they can try it, then they've more or less handled the spectrum. It is far too short a period of time for them to actually walk away from here thinking that they're fresco painters, but they will have a very good taste of what it's about.
What do you think of what's going on in the church here?
I think it's rather unique. It's odd. I like it. I really do.
Will you be back once it's finished?
Oh, definitely. I'd like to see it in the finished state because you can really see that there's some time and effort being put into it. And very pleasing.
Do you think this is the right place for art?
Most definitely. Art and religion goes hand in hand.
This, for me, is not probably the great religious experience it may be for a lot of people because I'm not into organized religion. I enjoy being around people that are really enthused by it. I don't solely look upon this as just a job, you know. I mean, it is to a certain degree. Doing religious work is a very good opportunity to do figurative work and portraiture, which is essentially what I'm into.
I do have an interest in religious art. It's something that everyone can relate to, for one thing, if nothing else. The masses of the people can relate to type of religious painting or drawing, which is sort of rare to find a form of art that can reach the masses and everyone can understand it.
I just had a real sense of all that was going on, if I may say, for Jesus, you know, and all of his disciples, what he was trying to do with the world, Trying to organize everything within himself on a very private, personal level must have been horrendous. But then to have all this mass of humanity around him, trying to understand as well and clamoring after him all the time. I find a real analogy there, that this is a little microcosm of the whole business. That in every movement, everything is represented. But if you look at any one of us, you see all of us. That gives real evidence of the kind of person he is, that he's not interested in a heavy-handed approach. He's leaving a lot of latitude for personal interpretation. And he does that with us as artists. He really encourages our own development of our style. That in no way does he force his own upon anyone. And I think he's doing that with the Last Supper. That he has wonderful symbolism throughout it, but it's very gentle. It's there if you want to look at it, if you want to be receptive to it. It's really rich, rich composition in a very gentle, simple, humble presentation. It's very, very strong, powerful work.
Fresco gives you a chance to work in churches, municipal buildings, areas where there's going to be a large viewing audience, and it's a way of contacting and reaching a lot of people. Because back in the old days, let's say the Renaissance, early Renaissance, when many people were not that well educated, many people didn't read, it was a real way of communicating with the masses, and I still feel that we have that potential today through the medium. Keeping the colors clean and controlled, I think, is one of the most important factors, because you got to remember this, the paint goes into the wall, and every brush stroke you put on to a certain degree will be seen, or in oil painting you can cover your mistakes up or take it off. Fresco painting is the sort of thing that your mistakes will be very easily seen, and you have to be very aware of everything you're doing. It's a methodical sort of process of slowly building and building, so I think the actual painting is the most difficult, because when it comes to the basic preparations, as far as all of your drawings and studies, you do those for oil paintings anyway, so that should be, of the same difficult nature.
It takes absolutely everything to do it. It takes everything physical. It takes all your artistic ability. It puts the full demand of painting totally into the effort of getting the picture done. And then once it's done, it doesn't belong to me, it'll belong to whoever sees it.
I do feel a real movement taking place. I do feel all of us really being affected by what we're doing, by the themes with which we're working, by the ways in which we have to look inside ourselves to find what's the composition. And I think it's very interesting to look at what each individual is choosing as a composition and what that reflects in each of our lives.
I shifted the feeling of the Last Supper that I've seen in most paintings. Most Renaissance pictures have it right at the dramatic moment of saying that one of you will betray me. And I've shifted it to right after the moment in which he said that the wine is my blood and the bread is my body. And so it creates a sort of a thoughtful and confused moment, and I have said a kind of a rebellious piece.
Mr. Bear, has having all these artists in the community changed anything around here this summer?
Well, in a way, yeah, I guess it has. It's been a little more activity around here, and I guess that's about all.
Have you noticed any differences, Mrs. Bear?
Well, not a great lot, but I think the merchants has prospered by it, and we've all enjoyed the activity to a certain extent, and when y'all leave, I think we'll miss y'all to an extent too. Going, every time we look out, we can see some of you going to and fro, and I'm sure that the stores around that have mentions all will miss you too. And I think everybody really has enjoyed all you folks. If, they just tell the truth about it, I think they would. But, every community like this is, if a group comes in that they don't know about much, Well, you know, there's things said. Some's good and some's bad, but I think their everyday walk of life proves out in the long run that they can see that it was for good instead of bad.
I mean, it's a figure that's doubting about this whole experience. You have doubts about trying to do this painting in 3 months. I mean, there are a lot of things. It happened late at night when I stuck him in there, and there was a little bit of mischief in it. I don't want to dwell too long on the fact that it's the Thomas figure. Also, it's another device in the painting, actually. Not for any sort of importance other than the fact that I'm looking out. It draws the viewer again a step closer and a step further into the picture. And it was easier for me to do it than to get somebody else at that point. And I think you have to play around a little bit with these things. There has to be a sense of play in a picture. I don't want it to be too weighty a thing that could get morbid.
I'm glad to see some work being taken away from the mass confusion, of large cities. I'm glad it's not in New York. I'm glad it's not in Washington, D.C., because it just takes on a completely different context. People in New York are not human, so that's another thing, We're around simple folk, and art should be simple, I think, and in that sense. It should be felt with the sort of simplicity and not necessarily the whole intellectual socialite, this and that, which is in New York.
I'm not irreligious, so you might think so sometimes, but I'm not a Bible basher, as one or two people up here are. Only during the evolution of the painting of the thing will the religious aspect sort of come out into the forefront. The actual performance of the thing, the actual painting of the thing is a religious experience. That sort of dedication is the dedication necessary is a religious thing.
I'm a Christian. That's the main thing I'd like to convey in life. There's so many bad Christian paintings, and I feel like it's almost a bad witness of Christianity. So now I'd like to do something really good in Christian art.
I wish I could explain why more of it isn't done, because you see so many people that appreciate it, and yet it's not really supported and it's not done very widely. And I think a lot of it has to do with the critics in this century that have a following of a public that believe everything they write, and the public no longer has the common sense to say what they like without having a professional critic telling them what they should like.
Local people are coming now in great droves, which they didn't in the early stages. People are coming in off the Parkway. People are coming because of the news media, the stories, and because of the little newscasts on television, and curiosity seekers, and people who are just vitally interested in what's happening here.
You mustn't think that it's all perfectly planned out beforehand. The actual happenings that occur during the painting of the thing is half of what it's all about. Things that you might say, oh, shit, I made a mistake, and they turn out to be something quite different. It's impossible for things to go exactly as you planned them. So there is an unavoidable spontaneity.
he's not just an artist to me, but I think he's an excellent teacher. And sometimes you don't have that in a combination. He's very willing to share what he knows, and I think that's enhances his being an artist, his willingness to share, because that's what really making a work of art is. It's sharing part of yourself, and he carries that more so into his willingness to teach students.
The whole point of this is to have a large gathering of people come and see this. More people find out through the reading in the various news journals, and it's a beautiful spot. We're essentially in a tourist area. And so even though it may seem like it's way out in the backwoods, there is a lot of traffic going through here, and I'm glad that they've given us the opportunity and chance to do it, because hopefully what this will do will, through the exposure, lead to doing frescoes in other places. So people, let's say 100, 200 years from now will look upon it as, it must have been a really exciting time when these people put all of this work in this church, the energies that were produced to get this project together. So, it's not only just viewing the painting, but maybe giving them a little bit better understanding that the Renaissance does exist to a certain degree even now. I mean, as far as if you can get this many people together to put, decorate a church, that says a lot.
I think modern art has caught itself up in the words, in playing with words and concepts, and has lost the idea of a lot of visuality of an image. I think it's played itself out, and you see things happening now like magic realism, super realism, and imagery is creeping back into painting and creeping back into art, and it's coming with right now with a very tongue-in-cheekness, but I think all the same people love it because it is illusion.
I had to do a picture in a church of a man stepping into the church, which meant that his shoe was right practically on the ground floor of the church. And I didn't even think about it when I drew up the cartoon and did all the work. But when it got down to having to paint that, and you had to lie on your stomach on the cold floor, and then they ran in the choir it was right next to the organ, and they kept stepping on me as I was trying to paint.
The people have just been great. I feel like I've made best friends that I will only know 2 months, but will be closer to me than people I've known for years and years because of our work on this one thing. Just that they're really good people, and I've learned a lot from them too, and had a lot of fun with them.
I have no doubt in my mind that this is going to be one of the greatest works of art in the world. There is no question in my mind that this will become one of the great spots where people will come to be inspired by a piece of art that tells a fantastic story, and that is the story of the new commandment, love one another as I have loved you.